Hello everybody, it's me Lemoni. Happy Friday, I hope you're well. Today, I want to give you some tips on how to improve your healing output while also focusing on survivability. I want to talk about armor class and armor weight. A lot of people ask me, should I be playing in light? Should I be playing in medium? Should I be playing in heavy? For PvP, PvE, literally every kind of content. So I figured, why not make a video about it? I've tried everything, I've tested everything. I feel like I have enough healer hours to kind of give you a general sense of you should be doing this and doing that, or if this fits your playstyle, you should do this or that, right? And I want to preface this by saying no armor class is bad. It depends on your playstyle, what kind of player you are, and whatever you need in order to excel in the healer role. Whether that's, playing in heavy, light, medium, whatever you need. Some people just fit that role differently. So I'm going to talk about it in PvP, and I'm going to talk about it in PvE. But before we get into that, I just want to say thank you all for the support that you give me every single day. I'm a Twitch partner now. I have 16K YouTube subs, and I just can't say thank you enough. So thank you to every single one of you for all the support you give me. If you want to connect with me, feel free to leave a comment. I'll respond at some point, I promise. DM me in Discord and join our Discord. It's linked below. Follow me on Twitch. I'll be streaming live today. I start typically somewhere between 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Central Time. Stream for 5 hours, and we just keep going. Follow our Twitter, our TikTok, all that stuff. And if you want to support me directly on Patreon, I release early content, extra content, ask for input, stuff like that. If you want to join our company on Eden, we are Covenant, and you are free to join. Just send me a DM, let me know what's up. But now, getting into this video. Healing weight is definitely something really important in New World, and it can really change the way that you have to play the healing role, right? You can either be up in the thick of it, you can be at the back, but there's going to be some key things you can do to really increase healing output. And so that's what I want to focus on today. So we'll talk about PvP, like I said, we'll talk about PvE, and we'll talk about each class specifically and where I think it excels. And then I'll give you maybe the best probably combo pairing with it for whatever you're doing. So sit back, relax, enjoy. I hope you have a great Friday. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and let's get into it. All right, so I want to start this off with PvP healing, and specifically, we're going to be talking about heavy armor. So a lot of people will tell me, hey, I'm doing heavy armor, but I want to improve my healing numbers. I want to be on the top of the meter. How can I do that? Well, most easily put, you will not be on the top of the meter typically as a heavy armor user. The benefit of being a heavy armor player is that you can hold points, you can sit there, you can keep people back, and you can be in the thick of the fight without dying and still putting up enough heals to keep most players alive, right? You do a good buff management, you can get those girthy lights and braces still, but your healing numbers will not be that of medium or light. So to start off, this is not a meter topper build. This is, I want to be that unkillable object that nobody can hit, that nobody can kill, and just to make people mad and stand there in my own sacred ground and not die. Now, obviously, there's exceptions, right? You're still a healer. Everybody can die to an extent, but this is going to give you a giant wiggle room to, sit there, take a lot of damage, and do whatever your team needs, but stay in melee, right? You're not sitting in the back. You're not sitting back there just shooting off lights and braces and blissful touches. You're up in there. You're typically an AoE healer build, or maybe you throw on lights and brace there, and I'll give you a build in a second, but you are the one that is in the grav well. You are the one who is on the point. You are not the, little napkin in the back who's going to get one-shotted by something. So there is a role for a lot of these players, right? Some people are asking, I just don't think this is it. It's not doing a lot of healing. Well, I think my point, contrary to that, is that a dead healer does no healing, right? That's one of my biggest mantras is if you're dead, you can't do anything. And then your team will all die. And that's it. Now, sure, you can obviously do things to increase output by really fine tuning your stats or making sure you have properly optimized gear. That's always something you can do. But optimally, as a heavy armor user, you're going to be wanting to sitting at that 150 con, 200 con, and then pumping the rest focus and just taking on the damage. You're a mix of a tank and a healer. I mean, you're the best of both worlds. Everybody will still love you for being up in the thick of it. And you can get a lot of healing because you can get to places where other healers cannot. So for my heavy armor users, you are more of a support, right? You're not a healing output monster. You are the reason that people survive. You're the reason why we can cap points, and you are kind of a damage sponge for the rest of your team. So embrace more of a tanky role and less of a I need to be on top of the meters role, because nobody else could be on the top of the meters if it weren't for people like you. So where do I think in PvP that heavy armor excels? this is going to be the loadout that I would highly recommend. All right, so here we are in the skill builder. I would say for healing, you're still going to Absolved, Blissful Touch. Now you can debate Mending Touch versus Enchanted Justice, but I think for the sake of removing debuffs, it's going to be nice to always have Mending Touch for PvP if you can hit those shots. Same healer loadout like normal. This will give you the most optimal output for the healing side. But for a tanky healer who's up in the mix, you can decide if you want to take Beacon or if you want to take Orb. Totally up to you, but I think you're going to really do well with Fortify. I think the big thing is between your healers and PvP, you should be splitting up in a war setting between Orbs and Beacons anyway, but I think for this setup, it'll most optimally work like that. We'll take Bend Light, we'll take Protector Strength, we'll take Light's Embrace, and then what I would highly suggest is taking Protector's Touch. A lot of the time, you're just going to be left-clicking with your life staff. Why not take more Fortify so that you can just stay up in the mix? You could go full AoE build too if you'd rather, dropping Light's Embrace, going into some stuff in Infused Light and Beacon, but totally your choice. This is the healing build I would recommend for heavy armor users in PvP. Just play in your sacred ground, orb yourself, and keep yourself topped off and your teammates topped off. Now, as far as a secondary complementary weapon, I'm going to recommend the Warhammer. This is one that when you're really holding points is going to do some incredible things. Now, what would I actually take? I think for holding points, we're not going to be as aggressive, so I'm not going to recommend taking Path of Destiny. Yes, it is nice and it can help your team a lot, but I think taking something like Clear Out to really hold that point, keep people back, will actually do you a lot of good and will net you some good haste gains. So we'll take Clear Out. I'd go into this, go into here, take this. We'd get that haste. You get a giant haste buff between Swing Away and if you take Facilitated Expedition. So that's just a lot of haste you can use to move around a bit. Now, you have some other options. I'm going to say you need to take Shockwave. You want that CC. And I kind of leave this up to the player. If they want more group utility, maybe you could go Path of Destiny. I think that'd be a good one. I'd also go into Prevailing Sprint, and then you can decide what else you'd want to do. But what I'm going to say is do something like that. We're going to take our heavy attack, take the gridded heavy attack if you want, and then we'll go into Wrecking Ball and get the Flatten. And we're not really focusing on damage. We're going to probably take, you could take heavy attacks, reduce cooldown, but I'm not really going to be swinging my hammer as much. So this last point is totally up to you. What I would say is apply this exhaust. So all of your abilities you're hitting people with, they get a reduced stamina regen. So I think that is a lot of value. This is more of a healer utility point holder hammer build. This would go great to complement your heavy armor PvP healer. The next one we're going to talk about is medium armor healing. I think medium armor for a lot of people is kind of that sweet spot. Gives you enough survivability. It gives you enough, healing output because we still get the 15% increased healing, and we can still have a little bit more ability because we can dash and dodge, like jump, instead of just doing our little thing like that when we have heavy armor. Now, what I will say is the output, you won't always top the meter. You certainly can because you have that increased stuff, but we're going to talk about light, and that's the light territory. But I think with medium, this gives you a really solid setup for wars and OPR especially, because you can still kind of play in that mid-range. You can dive in when you need to. You can also play back when you need to. You still have a lot of healing output. You don't have to put as many points into con, right? If you want more focus. But I think with medium, where it really excels is that you have the little dash jump, but you still have the tankiness of that kind of heavy armor in a sense, especially if you were to start putting points towards like 200 con. A 200 con loadout with medium armor with focus pumping is absurd. You do not die. It's essentially like playing in heavy armor. So it's kind of up to you, right? This is where I'm going to start to say player preference. You want to be more tanky, you can play in medium, but if you still want to have that chance to top the meter, medium is for you, right? There are plenty of times I've done absolutely absurd medium armor healing strictly because I did not die. I had more mobility than heavy, and I was just tankier than light. So it let me stay in fights. I played forward when I needed to. I played backward when I didn't have to be up close, right? When there's too much going on, stay back. When there's a little bit, you want to get in the mix, get a little spicy. Medium has that output potential, but also has the survivability if you mess up. So what I would say is medium, I think, is the perfect starting point for a beginner healer, right? You have that little bit of a cushion that heavy would give you, but you're still really having a ton of healing output that you wouldn't see in heavy armor typically. You then also have that mobility to get out of some situations, and I just think it's an all-around good spot for both OPR and for war. I would suggest having, at least 300 focus and then probably pumping the rest into con if you want to play in medium. I think that's a good spot. or you could play in that, 100 to 150 range, but really still, I focus on output with medium. A lot of you know me, I played medium for the longest time. I've been kind of switching things up, and I'll talk about what I think my favorite build is in a little bit, but I think medium is just an overall good start for beginners. Now, what weapon would I combo with it? All right, so in terms of the life staff or medium armor for PvP healing, I am a huge fan of Beacon and putting out a ton of AoE output with Beacon and Sacred Ground combos. This is going to give you the highest output possible, in my opinion, when you have to heal those clumps. So AoE healing is the key when you're PvP healing in OPR and War, and I think this build really excels, and then it'll give you enough where you can use your Light's Embrace and we still run Spirits United so we can get those really, really chunky ones. I'm not really as concerned about having Protector's Touch, because if I get way too into the mix, I'm probably going to get CC'd into Oblivion anyway and probably end up dying, but you should be able to tank most of it anyway. But I just think this is kind of a wasted point, depending on if you have a bigger group. Now, this will always apply to yourself and whoever else is in your group, so you can always flex between this one and that one. But I would say this is going to give you the most healing potential in medium. Now, to combo with it, everybody knows my favorite. I run the Rapier. I think Rapier gives you enough to get out of absolutely everything you need, and it's still important to in medium because you are a little bit more squishy than you'd be in heavy. But I say that kind of little lightly, right? You do a lot of healing output, but you still have that survivability, and I think that is really worth it. So then we'll go into here, and then you can kind of pick, either this point, or this point. I'd probably say, take something like Perfectionist, why not? And there you go. It's going to give you enough survivability, enough to get out of fights, and you should be able to do whatever you need to do, dodge in and out of the combat as needed. All right, now the final loadout is the light armor PvP healer. And in the past, I always say, if you go light, you're going to die. That's fine and dandy until we really got into this Rapier meta. Glass cannon, light armor healer, you go like 50 con or 100 con if you can go, perfect gear and then really pump into focus. But that at least 50 con, I would suggest you do the most healing I have ever seen, right? So like some of my OPRs, I mean, I didn't even have that long of one that I just posted most recently from my live Twitch clips of me hitting like a 15,500 OPR in a light armor setup. I died a ton of times, right? That's kind of the give and take of it. If you ever get caught out or you have a zerg of people who are coordinated and know to go for healers, you're going to have a rough time and you're going to have to really rely on that Rapier. But if you want to do the most healing humanly possible, you have to play in light armor. It's so much fun. It's a lot more intricate of a gameplay style. It's more difficult. There's a higher skill ceiling because you need to weave around. You need to know when should I be backing out. You need to preemptively move. You need to be set up with your team, and it takes a lot for that, right? And then if you do get caught out, you need to know, okay, I need to riposte here. I need to dash here. And you have to know how to get out of those situations. Gives you a ton of extra mobility because you can roll around, but we give up that survivability piece, and it can be pretty scary. I will say though, as of recent, this is my most favorite way to heal, and I'm working on my light armor set. I think there's some crazy things you could do with like a 150 con setup in a war with light armor. You can put out a ton of healing, kite people around for days, and you can just outplay them while topping every single person off while they're defending you. So if you have a really beefy front, don't sweat it. They'll keep you peeled and you can stay back, do your thing. I will say, as far as positioning goes, you have to stay towards the back. You can dive in when you absolutely need to, but be ready in a moment's notice to just dash out. I think the biggest thing to learn with light armor healing is that you need to be 2 to 3 steps behind your team. If you see somebody probably like 50 meters out and they're turning around, starting to run back, you should start running back at that moment before you get in too deep. You start using animations and then somebody catches up to you, right? So just be prepared, be preemptive, and you will do the most healing output you've ever seen. And tune into my live streams for some of this PvP light armor healing because it is a blast. All right, now, so for light armor, this is the life staff I'm going to suggest. It's going to look very similar to medium armor because it's the exact same thing. Again, if you want healing output in PvP, I'm a huge Beacon fan. It gives you so much, especially when you throw it on top of a Sacred Ground. You're going to see people ticking for thousands of health. Now, what I will say is if you're playing in light armor, something I do when I'm feeling a little saucy, I don't really want to remove debuffs because I'm not needing to, I'm in a pug OPR, I end up running Enchanted Justice. Because this gives you the survivability window where if you do get jumped and, if you die, you have this kind of wiggle room of you have 120-second cooldown and you can get more use out of it. So if I get jumped, I have this little safety net to keep me topped off as I run away, and it's not as big of a concern. So if you want to run that as well on your life staff and try to get the most healing output possible, because it is an AoE heal, go ahead, use Enchanted Justice. Now the combo for that, what am I going to use for a weapon? You know it, it's the exact same one. This rapier, it is essential for light healing. You need a rapier for light healing because you need to be able to escape, and nothing gives you the survivability and mobility as a rapier does. Just nothing comes close. I suppose you could say like a hatchet will let you survive, right? You have Berserk, you can run away and you can still take a one shot. But I think in light healing, you need something to let you run away, counter CC, and stun people back and get out of the fight. So use this rapier for any light healing you do, and you will have a blast, and it will allow you to get wherever you need on the battlefield to absolutely top the leaderboards. All right, so here's the little TLDR of PvP armor weight. If you want to have that, little gap, that little window of survivability, maybe you're a high ping player, maybe you're a new player, heavy armor is going to give you the absolute most survivability. It's great for point holding, great for just getting up in the mix, actually being in the grab well, being with the boys, and trying to stick through the damage. You won't have the highest healing output, but you sure have the highest survivability. Medium armor, you have a ton of output, a lot more than you would in heavy, but you still have survivability, but you gain mobility. You aren't able to stay really in the thick of it for too long, but depending on how you spec, you can sit in that, 150, 100 kind of window of con, or even go up to 200 if you really want to be, and you'll still be really solid and tanky and still have the damage output and the healing output that you won't have a concern. So this is a really good spot for starter players on the healing role because it gives you kind of the best of both worlds. You could top a meter, it's a little harder too, but you'll also have the survivability that will allow you not to die, right? And a dead healer does no healing. Now, as far as light healing for PvP, this is where if you want to just light up the meters, have those 15,000, 16,000 point games, this is where it's at. You want to see millions of healing, run a light build, roll around, get good at it. It's much harder to play because you don't have the cushion. You have to play on your own defensiveness, your own skill, and knowing when to use your cooldowns and where to use them and getting in the mix when you have to. So for me personally, what's my favorite armor class to heal with? This is going to surprise people, but I love light. Light is a ton of fun. I think you can flex it into a high con build in a war setting. And I think if you want to do the most healing possible to get through the absurd amounts of damage that players are doing, light armor is where it's at, baby. So go ahead, use that information. Let me know how things work for you. All right, this section is going to be a little bit shorter, but I'm going to talk about PvE healing now. Everybody knows how I PvE heal. You've seen it. I'm a medium lord, but I want to just talk about every single armor class and talk about where it's going to be beneficial and what I think you should be playing. All right, so let's start in order again. We'll start with heavy armor. So if you're a heavy armor healer, where do I think this has room in the PvE meta? I think you're in a solid spot. You can play, heavy armor. There's a lot of just constant damage that goes out in PvE that you don't need as much healing output, right? The damage is absurd in PvP, and that's why I think light armor builds are insane. But I think with mutators coming, I think just in general with how easy it is to take damage, I think that heavy armor healing is going to have a huge role. And I think it could be really, really good for a lot of players in mutators who aren't as good at dodging mechanics, dashing out of things, and who really want to be up near their tanks or up near, the melee players. Now, I don't think you have to do that in PvE, but I just think if you're worried about your own survivability, you are completely okay playing in like a 100 to 150 con heavy armor build with a lot of focus. So I think, you can do everything you want to do. You can flex into PvP too if you want, but I think heavy armor has a place. And it is one of the, higher end setups, but I wouldn't necessarily suggest it. I think with mutators coming though, it will have more light. Next, we have medium armor. Medium armor is my favorite. I think this gives me the survivability I need to take a couple shots from some mobs, but it gives me enough healing output that I'm not concerned, if damage gets too crazy. As we get to those higher mutators, you're going to need more healing output. And yeah, you'll need more survivability, but if you have too much survivability and not enough output, how are you going to keep your team alive? That's kind of the way I look at it, right? So I think medium armor is the best for PvE healing. I can still hit the really, really big heals, keep my team topped off, and do everything that I need to do. And if I accidentally take aggro or if I get hit by a mechanic, I'm not going to get blown up. I still have a pretty good safety window. I don't really have to worry. But I think in terms of actual output to survivability, medium is going to give you the best when mutators come. You'll be agile enough to get out of mechanics. You'll have the tankiness enough to get hit by a couple shots, but then you're going to have the output that you actually need to heal through some of these crazy new mechanics that are coming. So for me personally, I love medium armor. Now, light armor PvE healing, I think it's good if you're running like Las and Gen normal, but as mutators come, you will not be able to play in light armor. Unfortunately, I just don't think there's room for it. Even if you run a high con build, I just think you're going to be losing a lot there. You could maybe potentially play like a 200 con light setup, I guess, but the amount of mitigation you're going to need if you get hit by something, a lot of these things in mutators will one-shot you 10 times over if you're in light armor. So for me, I just think there is no room for light armor PvE healing, personally. Now, you want to take on that challenge? You want to be that player? Go ahead, be my guest. I respect it. I think light armor is definitely the most fun build to play, but I think for mutators and PvE content, even Las and Gen, there are tons of things you're going to get one-shotted by in light armor. But if you're up for it, give it a go. I think it's fun, and let me know how it goes for you. So now in terms of builds for PvE, I'm going to say look at my 1.2 healing video. I'll throw up the build really quick here, so 1 second. All right, so life step-wise, this is the setup we're going to go. We need to remove debuffs. We're going to go like this. This is going to be the most general setup, I think, when we're using a Void Gauntlet. I do a lot of Void Gauntlet healing, so I want Orb so that I can maintain all my Void Gauntlet drain healthing. Now, I don't think this is going to be the mutator build. I will drop a video next week on what I think are the best builds for mutators, and hint, hint, it's probably going to involve Splash of Light, I'm not going to lie. So keep your eyes peeled, get excited for that one. But as far as currently just doing the PvE content, this is the build that I typically go. I want this just in terms of survivability because I don't really need that output. Between my Essence Rupture, my Orb on Void Gauntlet, my Orb here, my Sacred Ground, I barely Lights Embrace anybody when I'm running Las and Gen. So I think for PvE content, this is a really solid setup. It's easy to play, easy to do your little targeted healing. You could, if you want to, you could go full non-target and go Beacon. You could, if you also feel comfy, drop Orb for Beacon. I just like running Orb because I can throw a couple of these out and then have like 22 seconds of buff time while I'm doing all my crazy Void Gauntlet stuff that you'd see in the PvE 1.2 healing video. So this is the life staff I highly suggest for any armor setup who's going to be doing some PvE healing, but I want to just, put a little warning here. This is not what I would suggest for mutators. I think it's going to be really good, but I think there's going to be some other things that we need as far as cleansing debuffs and having more output and managing mana. Now, on the side piece, this is my favorite Void Gauntlet in the world. This is what I'm still going to be using for mutators, but the thing is, the exception, I will not be draining my health constantly. Sure, there'll be windows where I think there's opportunity to drain some health, but I don't think it's going to be as worth. But running this setup with an Orb will still be very, very, very effective. So go ahead and use it. But I think even if you aren't draining health, having Orb for extra healing is huge. Essence Rupture is by far your best heal in the game, and people don't really talk about it, but it is. Everybody's getting healed for the damage they do, and then it pops for another, big chunk. And with a Blessed Void Gauntlet, that's a lot. And then having Oblivions, even if you're not forcing cooldowns, when these crit, it still reduces cooldown here, right? So there's still that chance. We take this, if we can hit multiple people, something I've been doing is throwing out my Orb, and then I instantly pop it to get a quick 4-stack if there's multiple enemies. And then we can, throw out another Oblivion, throw out another Essence Rupture. If you want to understand how to do this combo, feel free to watch. Actually, I'm going to take a different point here. I'm going to go right there, and we're good, right? This is kind of the setup I would use. You get crit chance, cooldown reduction, and then we get Keen Humility. Now, what I will say is, though, if you want to get rid of this one's not like super duper important, but you could take Efficient Harvest instead and just have a little bit of less health drain when you're below 25% mana. But I think this one has more value. So in terms of PvE healing, you get an Empower. It's a weaken, gives you stamina back. You have a global heal that pops and also gives stamina back. And then you have a dot that you can use as a hot. There's all kinds of stuff. So you can throw out the Orb for damage, pop it, get a double rend on everybody, do a big burst of damage when you need that damage output, or let it come back and give a heal over time to everybody. So Void Gauntlet, even without reducing cooldowns, will be the best side piece right now that I think when mutators are coming and for just general PvE content. So what's the TLDR of PvE healing? All right, 1, heavy. If you feel like you need some more survivability, you're not as confident in your ability to dodge mechanics, you can run heavy all day, right? You lack that mobility, you have a little bit less output, but I think in terms of mutators coming and just the general PvE content right now, you are in a solid spot because the output of PvE at the moment is not like PvP damage by any means. And I think with the setups we gave you, Heavy armor can excel, and you can still be that tanky monster and take a lot of hits. 2, medium. Medium has solid healing output, solid survivability, and I think that's what's going to make it great for mutators, right? As we get up to those plus 8, 9, 10s, there's going to be a lot of healing, and we do need a little bit more output, but we still need to have that survivability. And then I like having the mobility with the dodges, so I think medium is king in PvE, in my personal opinion. Now, light armor. Light armor, I think, in terms of mutators coming, it will be kind of a throw. You will be one-shotted by things. You will even get one-shotted by things right now in Laz and Gen if you aren't running a high con light armor build because you lack mitigation. So you can run it. I respect it. You'll have the craziest healing output, but I think when mutators are here, light armor is really going to be a little too tough and not just in the meta at all. I don't think there's any room for it. I think with this patch coming and the mutators, heavy and medium will be king, whatever you prefer and whatever you need. So that's all I'm going to have for you today. I hope this clears up some things on how to PvP heal and what armor you should be using, how to PvE heal, what armor you should be using, and where you'll excel as a player and what will work best for you. I think especially with mutators coming, I think you need to know what armor you should be using in prep so that you can get your armor sets ready. For PvP, you just need healing output right now, and that's the way it's going to stay. So I think light will still be the fun one. You need that mobility, a lot of healing output. But as always, thank you for everything. I appreciate anybody who's watching this video. Even if you're not watching it, I'm still going to say it. I appreciate every single one of you. I could not be in this position right now making this content for you every single day if it weren't for every single one of you. And I want all of you to know that. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for the follows on Twitch. Thank you for the YouTube subs, the donos, the subs on everything, the whatever you do to support me and Lemoni in general. Thank you. Right, that's all I can say is thank you. So as always, if you want to connect with me, leave a comment. I'll get back to you at some point. Hit me up in Discord, join the Discord, leave a DM, whatever you need, I will respond. 2, 3 maybe. Follow us on Twitch. We start streaming 10 a.m., 11 a.m., Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Central Time, and we go for 5 hours. Follow our Twitter, our TikTok. We're going to start being a little bit more active on the TikTok. I had a fun one most recently, so go check it out. And if you want to support me directly, feel free to hit up my Patreon. If you're wondering, what am I putting out on my Patreon? What's special? Well, I'm going to be putting out early content, extra content, clips from other games. I ask for insight, questions, whatever people need. It gives you another point of access just to reach out to me. So thank you to every single one of you on my Patreon. Thank you, Jacob, Thuggius, Shane Gill, Anna Reno, Jerome, Nathaniel, Thonar, Joseph, Tarvi, Generic, Ronan, Ralph, Bob, Florian, Blue Beagle, GDBJ, Kitchens, Dexter, Rich, Rob, Josh, Michelle, Nade, Rich, and Somanex. Thank you all for your support, but thank you, every single one of you, just for watching. So as always, thank you to every single one of you for watching. Thank you to every single one of you for listening. But most importantly, thank you, everybody, for being you and supporting me. I appreciate you.